Another day, another story. Let's know about travel tips. Tribal states, also known as tribal nations or indigenous nations, refer to political entities or self-governing communities formed by indigenous peoples. These states have their own governments, legal systems, and cultural traditions, which are distinct from the larger nation-states in which they are located. Tribal states exist in various parts of the world, including North America, South America, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. They often have a history that predates the establishment of modern nation-states and have managed to maintain their distinct identity, cultural practices, and governance structures over time. The governance systems of tribal states can vary widely, as each nation has its own unique political and social structure. Some tribal states have traditional forms of governance, with leadership positions held by hereditary chiefs or elders. Others have adopted more modern structures, such as elected tribal councils or governments. In many cases, tribal states have a degree of autonomy within the larger nation-state in which they are located. This may be recognized through legal agreements, treaties, or constitutional provisions that grant indigenous peoples certain rights and self-governance powers. The level of autonomy can vary significantly, ranging from limited self-administration to full sovereignty. Tribal states face various challenges and issues, including the preservation of their cultural heritage, protection of ancestral lands, economic development, social services, and political representation. Indigenous peoples often advocate for the recognition of their rights, including the right to self-determination and control over their traditional territories. It's important to note that the specific situation and status of tribal states can vary greatly between different countries and regions. Laws, policies, and historical circumstances have shaped the relationship between indigenous peoples and the larger nation-states differently around the world. The concept of tribal states varies across different countries and regions. In some cases, indigenous peoples have negotiated treaties or agreements with national governments, granting them specific rights and land ownership. These agreements may recognize their self-governance and provide a legal framework for their political institutions. Tribal states typically have their own leadership, such as a chief or council, who makes decisions and represents the interests of their respective communities. They may have their own legal systems, courts, and enforcement mechanisms to maintain order and resolve conflicts within their territories. Additionally, tribal states often have cultural institutions, such as schools or community centers, that preserve and promote their cultural heritage. It's important to note that the status and recognition of tribal states vary greatly between countries. In some cases, they have a high degree of autonomy and self-governance, while in others, their sovereignty and rights may be more limited. Additionally, the relationship between tribal states and national governments can differ, ranging from cooperative partnerships to historical and ongoing conflicts. Overall, tribal states represent the political and cultural resilience of indigenous peoples, allowing them to maintain their distinct identities, exercise self-determination, and preserve their heritage within the broader context of the nation-state framework.